Arizona looks sun-bleached and wide open. Red rock, endless highways, tourist towns glowing under desert sunsets. But when the heat drops and the streets empty, some of these small towns feel different. Older, heavier, places where history didn't just pass through, it lingered. Here are the top 12 most haunted small towns in Arizona. Locals won't talk about them. 12. Jerome. Jerome clings to Cleopatra Hill like it's trying not to fall off. Once a booming copper mining town, it earned the nickname the wickedest town in the West. Fires, mine collapses, violence, the place saw it all. Today it's an artsy tourist stop by day. At night, the steep streets go quiet. Old brick buildings creak. And the Jerome Grand Hotel, formerly a hospital, is famous for unexplained footsteps, flickering lights, and guests who report feeling watched. Whether you believe the stories or not, Jerome after midnight feels suspended in another century. 11. Tombstone. The name says it all. Tombstone built its reputation on gunfights and lawlessness. The infamous shootout at the OK Corral is woven into American legend. But after the staged reenactments end and tourists leave Allen Street, something shifts. The Birdcage Theater, once a saloon and gambling hall, is said to have bullet holes still embedded in the walls. Visitors have reported strange noises and shadowy movement in photographs. Old wooden sidewalks, dim street lamps, wind pushing dust across empty storefronts. You don't need imagination here, just silence. 10. Bisbee. Bisbee hides in the Mule Mountains near the Mexican border. It's colorful by day, staircases, art galleries, old mining buildings stacked into the hillsides. But Bisbee's mining past came with accidents, labor unrest, and tragedy. The Copper Queen Hotel is often mentioned in local lore, with guests describing unexplained sounds and objects shifting on their own. At night, the narrow stair streets feel maze-like. Echoes bounce strangely off canyon walls, and the hills loom dark above the town. 9. Prescott. Prescott looks peaceful. Historic courthouse plaza, tree-lined streets, Whiskey Row glowing under soft lights. But this town survived fires, frontier violence, and Prohibition-era chaos. The Hotel St. Michael has its own share of eerie stories, often tied to its 19th century roots. When the bars close and Whiskey Row empties, the old brick buildings stand in near-total stillness. The kind of stillness where even your footsteps feel too loud. 8. Clifton. Clifton sits in a rugged canyon in eastern Arizona. It was built around copper mining, and like many mining towns, hardship was common. Old storefronts remain. Some appear frozen in time. At night, canyon walls block out moonlight. Streets grow shadowy fast. Wind funnels through narrow corridors between buildings. There's an isolation here that feels amplified by the terrain. 7. Globe. Globe has deep mining roots and a long frontier history. Its historic district is lined with century-old buildings. The Drift and Saloon is often mentioned in local legends, with patrons claiming odd sensations late at night. Whether it's history or atmosphere, Globe After Dark feels like a film set after the cameras stop rolling. Empty, dim, waiting. 6. Williams. Williams is known as the gateway to the Grand Canyon. Route 66 nostalgia fills the streets. But when neon signs flicker off and trains stop running, the historic district takes on a quieter tone. The Grand Canyon Railway Hotel has been tied to various unexplained guest experiences over the years. Cold mountain air, distant train horns, long stretches of dark forest surrounding town. It doesn't feel threatening, just different. 5. Florence. Florence is one of Arizona's oldest towns. Its Territorial prison, now a historic site, once housed notorious inmates. Old adobe structures and courthouse buildings still stand. After dark, the desert air cools quickly. Shadows stretch across empty sidewalks. The prison walls look stark under minimal lighting. History here isn't buried. It's preserved. 4. Yuma. Yuma's Territorial prison once held some of the West's toughest criminals. The stone structures still overlook the Colorado River. At night, wind moves through the prison yard. Iron bars cast long shadows. The river flows silently in the background. It's the kind of place where the past feels very close. 3. Flagstaff. Flagstaff is known for pine forests and mountain air. But its historic downtown holds stories from railroad days and early frontier years. The Hotel Monte Vista is often cited in local lore for unexplained late-night happenings. When snow falls and muffles the streets, downtown can feel eerily quiet. Lights glow in old windows, and everything else disappears into forested darkness. 2. Kingman. Kingman sits along historic Route 66. It carries layers of railroad and desert history. The town's older buildings and museums preserve that past, sometimes too well, according to local legends. At night, the desert beyond town limits becomes pitch black. Highways stretch endlessly under starlight. There's a vastness here that can feel overwhelming. 1. Apache Junction. Apache Junction sits at the base of the Superstition Mountains, and those mountains carry some of Arizona's most enduring legends, including tales of the lost Dutchman's gold. Rock formations twist into sharp silhouettes at dusk. Trails wind into rugged terrain where visibility drops quickly after sunset. The desert grows silent. Stars blaze overhead, and the mountains look almost alive against the sky. Locals know to respect that land, because out there, darkness falls fast, and stories linger longer than footprints. Arizona's haunted reputation isn't about jump scares or horror movies. It's about layers of history, mining accidents, frontier violence, abandoned buildings left to weather in dry desert air. By day, these towns celebrate that history. By night, they feel it. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, there's no denying this. Some small towns change when the sun goes down. And in Arizona, the desert remembers everything. It remembers footsteps that never returned. It remembers towns that boomed too fast and emptied too quickly. It remembers fires, floods, gunshots, strikes, and silence. Desert landscapes have a way of preserving the past instead of burying it. Unlike humid climates where wood rots and metal collapses, Arizona's dry air freezes history in place. Old storefronts linger. Weathered signs remain readable. Abandoned structures don't disappear, they stand. And at night, those structures take on a different personality. In daylight, a boarded-up window is just architecture. After dark, it becomes a blank square of shadow. The desert amplifies contrast. Bright sun all day, deep black at night. There's very little in between. Twilight fades quickly, and once it's gone, visibility drops fast, especially outside city centers. In towns like Jerome, perched high on steep hillsides, darkness falls unevenly. Some streets remain lit while others are swallowed in shadow. Narrow staircases and winding roads can feel disorienting even to visitors who walked them confidently hours earlier. That shift in perception matters. Our brains rely heavily on visual cues to feel safe. When those cues disappear, when depth becomes harder to judge and distant shapes blur together, the mind starts filling in gaps. It's not supernatural. It's human instinct. Reputation is often tied to its mining history. Copper, silver, and gold built communities almost overnight. Workers arrived in waves. Fortunes were made and lost. And like many boomtowns, some places were built quickly with little long-term planning. When mines closed, populations dropped. Buildings remained. That combination, rapid growth followed by decline, leaves behind structures with stories attached to them. Take Bisbee. Its stacked hillside homes and narrow alleyways create acoustic pockets. Sound doesn't travel the way you expect. A door closing can echo. A loose sign can rattle repeatedly in the wind. Even distant voices can bounce off canyon walls. Late at night, when tourism quiets and streets empty, those sounds feel amplified. In Tombstone, the historic district leans into its Old West identity. Wooden sidewalks, saloon-style doors, dim lantern-style lights. By day, it's theatrical and engaging. By night, when staged gunfights are over and most visitors leave, the same atmosphere can feel starkly authentic. Streetlights cast long, dramatic shadows. Wind moves dust across Allen Street. And suddenly the setting feels less like a reenactment and more like a preserved moment. The desert plays a role too. Unlike forested environments, where trees block wind and absorb sound, open desert allows noise to travel unpredictably. A distant vehicle can sound closer than it is. A gust of wind can create low, shifting tones as it passes through gaps in buildings. In Kingman, where long highways stretch into darkness, that openness becomes especially noticeable. Once you step beyond lit downtown areas, there's very little ambient light. No tall skyline. No surrounding glow from neighboring towns. Just horizon and stars. That vastness can feel calming or isolating. Human perception shifts dramatically in low-light desert conditions. Without trees or tall structures to create boundaries, distance becomes harder to judge. A single rock formation can look like movement. Heat retained in pavement can create subtle mirage effects even after sunset. Again, not paranormal, but powerful. In Flagstaff, elevation adds another layer. Cooler air, pine forests, and occasional snowfall give it a different energy than southern Arizona towns. When snow falls at night, it absorbs sound. Streets grow quiet. Footsteps become muffled. Quiet like that can feel peaceful, but it can also feel suspended, as if time slowed down. Historic hotels in towns like Flagstaff and Prescott often become focal points for ghost stories. Older buildings naturally make more noise. Pipes expand and contract. Wood beams shift as temperatures drop. Vintage elevators hum differently than modern ones. Add dim lighting and creaking staircases, and imagination steps in easily. In Prescott, Whiskey Rose brick facades look warm and inviting in early evening. But after closing time, when the courthouse plaza empties and bars lock their doors, those same buildings stand in near total stillness. The absence of activity can feel heavier than activity itself. Arizona's climate also means many historic sites remain accessible year-round. Unlike northern states where snow and ice limit nighttime exploration in winter, Arizona's relatively mild evenings invite wandering, which can increase exposure to unfamiliar terrain. Desert trails near Apache Junction, for example, lead quickly into rugged landscapes. Once the sun drops behind the Superstition Mountains, visibility changes fast. Rock faces turn black. Trails blend into surrounding ground. Without a headlamp, orientation can disappear within minutes. And when you can't clearly see your surroundings, your senses heighten. Every sound matters more. Every shadow holds more weight. It's easy to understand how legends grow in environments like this. Stories are part of small-town culture everywhere, but in Arizona's historic communities, they often tie back to real events. Mining accidents, fires, frontier conflicts, epidemics in the early days of settlement. Places like Florence and Yuma preserve prison sites and territorial buildings as historical landmarks. Stone walls, iron bars, sparse lighting. They're educational during the day. At night, those same elements feel stark. The desert's temperature swings add another sensory shift. Summer days can exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit, but nights cool rapidly. That sudden drop changes how air feels against your skin. It changes how wind moves. It even changes scent, dry earth releasing subtle mineral notes as temperatures fall. You become more aware of your body, more aware of your breathing. In towns surrounded by open land, light pollution is minimal. The Milky Way becomes visible. Stars appear sharp and bright. That cosmic scale can make human structures seem fragile by comparison. Standing in the middle of a quiet street in Clifton or Globe at midnight, you might notice how small the buildings feel against the sky. That contrast, tiny town, enormous universe, can create a strange emotional shift. Not fear exactly, but perspective. And perspective, in low light and high silence, can feel intense. It's also worth noting that small towns shut down earlier than cities. Restaurants close. Shops lock up. Foot traffic disappears. If you're used to 24-hour activity, that early quiet can feel abrupt. You step outside expecting noise. You get none. Arizona's haunted town narrative thrives on that gap between expectation and reality. Visitors expect lively Old West charm or scenic desert calm. What they sometimes experience instead is emptiness. And emptiness invites interpretation. The truth is, most of these towns are safe. Residents go about their evenings normally. Neighbors know each other. Porch lights turn on. Dogs bark in the distance. But for outsiders, unfamiliar streets and unfamiliar darkness can feel charged. Charged by history. Charged by environment. Charged by imagination. The desert doesn't erase stories. It frames them. It preserves architecture long enough for legends to attach themselves. It provides dramatic lighting conditions that heighten perception. It creates silence deep enough to hear your own heartbeat. The lines of old buildings become sharper against the sky. Wood grain stands out. Brick textures deepen. Details you ignored in daylight suddenly demand attention. In towns like Tombstone or Prescott, history isn't tucked behind glass cases at night. It sits out in the open. Wooden railings, iron fences, courthouse domes. all still standing long after the crowds thin out. And when there are no tour groups, no stage performances, no background music, those elements feel less like attractions and more like artifacts. That shift can be subtle, but it changes everything. Humans are wired to read environments quickly. We scan for motion, for faces, for signals of activity. When those signals disappear, the brain keeps scanning anyway. A loose shutter becomes movement. A distant hum becomes a whisper. A shadow stretching across a stairwell becomes a presence. Again, not paranormal. Predictable. Open desert amplifies that effect. Step just a few blocks beyond a historic district, and you're often at the edge of vast, undeveloped land. In cities, light spills outward endlessly. In small Arizona towns, it stops abruptly. One last street lamp. One last building. Then darkness that feels complete. That boundary can feel dramatic, almost theatrical. In higher elevations like Flagstaff, colder air sharpens the experience even more. Breath becomes visible. Footsteps crunch. Sound carries differently through pine-lined streets. The environment feels textured, layered with scent, temperature, and stillness. Further south, in warmer towns near the Superstition Mountains, the night air cools fast after sunset. Pavement releases stored heat. A breeze moves through alleyways with a low, steady tone. The environment shifts from harsh brightness to soft contrast in less than an hour, and humans respond strongly to transitions. We're comfortable in gradual change. Rapid change captures attention. Arizona's small towns specialize in that rapid shift. Bright sun to deep shadow. Lively afternoon to silent midnight. Crowded sidewalks to empty streets. The visual story flips quickly, and the emotional tone follows. Visitors often describe that feeling as energy, but energy can simply mean contrast. Contrast between past and present. Contrast between light and dark. Contrast between expectation and reality. During the day, you interpret a place intellectually. You read plaques. You take photos. You listen to guides. At night, interpretation becomes sensory. You feel scale. You feel quiet. You feel distance. Standing alone beneath a wide Arizona sky, surrounded by preserved buildings that have outlasted generations, perspective settles in. Not fear. Perspective. You recognize how quickly boomtowns rose, how quickly they emptied, how long the structures endured afterward. Wood, brick, iron, all holding shape against sun and time. The desert doesn't rush decay. It slows it. And when decay slows, memory lingers. That lingering quality is what people interpret as haunting. Not ghosts walking streets, but stories that never fully dissolved. Events that left marks. Communities that shifted but didn't vanish entirely. The architecture remains. The grid of streets remains. Even the names on old signage remain. So when darkness removes modern distractions, traffic noise, retail lights, constant movement, what's left is a clearer view of what has always been there. Structure, space, silence. For locals, that clarity is ordinary. They've grown up with it. They know which sounds belong and which don't. They know how the wind behaves in certain seasons. They know that a swinging sign means the temperature just dropped. For newcomers, that same clarity can feel amplified because it's unfamiliar, and unfamiliar environments heighten perception. Arizona's reputation for haunted towns isn't built on horror tropes. It's built on environmental psychology, on preserved architecture, on dramatic natural contrast, on the way desert night removes visual clutter and leaves only essentials behind. No fog machines, no special effects, just old building, if you stand still long enough. And that combination is powerful. So when people say locals won't talk about certain towns, it's rarely about secrets. It's more about familiarity. What feels eerie to visitors often feels ordinary to those who live there. They've heard the wind 1,000 times. They know which buildings creak. They understand how quickly twilight fades behind canyon walls. To them, it's home. To someone passing through after dark, it can feel like stepping into a preserved memory. Arizona's small towns aren't haunted in the cinematic sense. They're layered. Layered with history that remains visible. Layered with architecture that hasn't been replaced. Layered with landscapes that don't soften under artificial light. And when night falls, those layers become more noticeable. Not because something supernatural awakens, but because everything else goes quiet enough to notice what was already there. The desert remembers. And after dark, it lets you feel it.